this lunch session with an opening video from one of our sponsors. So, eyes to the screen.
Hello, I'm Yolanda DeAndre Morris, president of the Christian Television Network. Over 45 years ago, my parents, Bob and Molly DeAndre, founded CTN with a vision to use television to reach souls with the salvation message of Jesus and to be part of helping people take one step closer in their relationship to Christ. Our slogan, Enjoy Life, Consider Eternity, is the foundation for everything we do here at CTN. In the United States, we have 24 local affiliate stations and satellite channels on DirecTV, Dish Network, and Glory Star. Our international reach includes broadcasting on AppStar 7 and in the UK on Freeview and Freely, and in Canada on Tugo. We also reach the Spanish-speaking audience with 24 hours of Christian programming on Christian Television Network International. CTN spans the globe, but we don't stop at television. We've embraced the digital age with streaming platforms, the podcast division of our network known as Amplify, and our new cinematic venture, CTN Studios. Each step we take to create and distribute God-honoring content is to ignite hope, inspire change, and share the message of Christ through sight and sound around the world. For more information about CTN, you can connect with us at ctnonline.com and download the CTN app today.
Hi there, my name is Paul Lodato. I serve as the executive director of our brand new film division, CTN Studios, that was mentioned by our president, Yolanda Morris, and under Brian Morris. And it's an honor to just be part of the Christian Worldview Film Festival. This is my first time actually being here, even though I've known the Kendrick brothers for many years and have helped to promote their films in our Fort Myers, Florida market and other markets. But now I'm out of my sandbox. I just want to briefly say to those of you that are aspiring filmmakers, keep it Christ-centered. That's obviously why you're here. So thank God for doing that and being salt and light to impact culture through film. And also, if you're ready for a television platform, we do have a national movie night in prime time, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. That includes DirecTV, Dish Network, Glory Star Network, and many of our affiliates. But again, if you have a vision to do a film, obviously do the right distribution protocol, theatrical, streaming platforms, explore, and then television. That's what I always suggest. So again, if you want to connect, I'll just repeat this website address, ctnonline.com, ctnonline.com. Again, my name is Paul, and it's a joy to be here, and thank you for all that each of you are doing. Keep running with the dream. There's an old saying, the dream that never leaves you is the dream that God has assigned you to solve. God bless you.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John LaGrange. I'm the director of This is the Gospel, a Christ-centered discipleship ministry out of this church here, Sherwood Baptist Church in Albany, Georgia. And I get to oversee the ministries out of This is the Gospel in Sherwood Baptist Church around the world. And so I'm excited to list some names out here today of some folks among you, your peers among you, who have traveled from far to be here. I mean, we've got countries as far as South Korea, Germany, Brazil that are represented here. And so I'm just excited that we've got filmmakers who are desiring to make Christ known no matter where they are. And I want to announce our attendees that have registered and are here today as recognition. So when you hear the names, they don't have to stand up if they don't want to, but when you hear the names around this week, you can engage them and encourage them. So I want to welcome Young Woo Kim, Daniel Kim, Maria Kim, Abigail Kim. They are here from South Korea, and they have a movie called Drops of Water. A Drop of Water. Super grateful for them to be here. An incredible story about ministering to North Koreans. We're excited to see that. Benjamin Waddell, Trevor Hewer, Cassidy Hewer, Laura Beth Hewer, J.R. Fountain, Gabriella Calvo, We're super excited that you all have come to join us. My new friend, Andrew Clark. Where is Andrew? Andrew's in the middle here from Australia, from down under. Super grateful he is here. Yes. And his friend at the table, João from Portugal. Boa tarde. We're so glad you're here. Yes. James Bagua, Kevin, I'm sorry, my eyes are failing me. Kenyatta, Kevin Kamai, Dennis Reineck, Cornelia Scheel, my friend from Germany, here a second year. Yes, we're grateful you and your family are here. His wife Tabitha and his little son Elias running around. So grateful to see young families a part of this. Also, Stephen Friedel and Daniel Friesen, grateful to meet Daniel today from Brazil. There we go. Yes, very cool. And of course, Cornelius' friend Stefan and his friend Dennis here, who's at the middle table too from Germany. Lots of good stuff happened in Germany. And then, of course, rounding out some of our other friends, Mr. Joy Kalukaren, who is coming from India. I haven't seen him yet, but he's here somewhere. And then Bayong is Ko, Young Hoon Yoon, Jaisuk Jayong, Chanwoo Lee, Yurim Chow, and Sarah Bay. We are so incredibly grateful that you all have come. God bless you all.
All right, just a couple of things before we delve into our panel. If you need to leave at any point, absolutely fine, no problem. What we do ask is that you don't take your food into the worship center or into the atrium. Eat your food here, leave it here, don't take it with you. I'm speaking to myself as well. I didn't get time to eat my cookie, but I'm gonna eat my cookie, but I'm not gonna take it into the atrium. I'm gonna eat it in here, okay? I'm already the badge police. Don't make me the cookie police, guys. Don't do it. All right, so I want you to look at the screens just for a moment. What's going to happen is, when our panel begins, there's going to be a QR code on the screen. There it is. Wow. I said it and it happened. Cool. So the QR code on the screen, all you need to do is scan that on your cell phone, and you will have the opportunity to submit a question. You'll also have the opportunity to promote a question. In theory, the questions with the most votes will be the questions that get asked. You also have the ability to demo a question. So that's basically it. Over to our amazing panel. Give them a round of applause.
Wow, what a big crowd. It gets bigger and bigger every year. It's really an honor for me to moderate this panel with such esteemed storytellers, filmmakers, writers, all sorts of hyphenates. My name is George Escobar. I'm with 3 Day Studios and Advent Film Group. And I know many of you already in the room, so I want to give everybody an opportunity to just really briefly tell us what you'd like them to know about yourself. Because they can read your bio on the program. What's not in the bio you want people to know? John?
I thought we agreed you would only give me sports questions.
That's a sporty question.
Yeah, I'm a sports fan. What I want you to know is that you can do this industry and you can have a good family. And my wife of 37 years is in the back, and our kids love each other and love the Lord and are in ministry. And our grandkids are awesome. And that's a lot of what Stephen was talking about the other night. But I like to brag on my family, and I would rather you get to know them than me. And we're proof you can do it.
I was ready for the sports question, too. They misled us. Yeah, I guess in keeping with that, I did admit in a session earlier today that my patron saint for the longest time was Jonah. I misread the story. I thought you're supposed to go in the opposite direction. So finally figured it out. But in figuring that out, I think the encouragement is, I get asked all the time, do I need to go to Hollywood? Should I go to Atlanta? Should I go to, where's the best place for me to go? The best place for you to go is wherever God is sending you. And if you want to have the career that is going to be the satisfying career, it's waiting for you wherever God sends you. So go where God sends you.
Hey, you're a good-looking group. This is great. I'm Alex Kendrick. This is my home church. Love this church. My brother Stephen, who's here, my brother Shannon, We are going into 30 years of marriage with our wives and our kids, and now our kids, what I'm very excited about, are starting to get into feature filmmaking as well. And the last thing I'll say before we jump in, I'm excited this year, the Lord's stretching us, that we're about to start making movies in other countries and other cultures. We've done all of our films so far in America, grateful for that, but now they're going to start becoming, biblical or shot in other countries, other languages, and I'm very, very excited about that. So as the Lord opens the door, we're excited to keep growing as filmmakers and getting stretched a little bit in the process.
Thank you guys for sharing. We've got a ton of questions here. There's no way we can cover it in the time allotted to us. But I do have one or two. Are the questions supposed to be up here? Yeah? Because I'm not going to necessarily go through that list in order. I'm going to jump around. But I want to ask some foundational questions. These are softball questions, all right? Sports. Like, for example, what is the essence of a great story and what makes it resonate across time and culture and hopefully change lives?
Let me start. The first thing that comes to my mind is, and I am couching this as a believer in Jesus Christ, but when I watch a movie, what does it do to me? And how do I finish the movie? What's going on in my mind, my heart? And hopefully, it doesn't pull me away from the Lord or fill my mind with unnecessary thoughts, distractions, even if it's entertaining. And so I'm learning, the older I get, I'm 54 years old, I'm still learning so much about how to guard my thoughts and my heart in a way that honors the Lord so that my days are fruitful. And I'm praying that our latter days are more fruitful than our earlier days. And I'm sure many of you are thinking that too. Yes, I want my more fruitful days coming. So when I watch a movie, just like I hope when someone watches one of our movies, they are edified, they are challenged, they leave and finish watching one of our movies thinking, how do I take steps of faith? Or how do I get this right with God? How do I grow in loving other people? So the world gives you plenty of entertainment, tons, and oh my goodness, we're oversaturated with entertainment. And so as a follower of Christ, how can I use these platforms? Yes, they can be entertaining, but how can I use these platforms to edify and draw people to the Lord? So for me, when we watch a movie, even as a family, fine if it has entertainment value, but even more than that, what does it do to us and what does it put in our minds and our hearts? So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
I think for a story to have impact, I think it has to take the audience on a journey. And typically someplace they have not been before, someplace that might look familiar but feels fresh. I think we have a lot of entertainment out there that is meant to comfort us by reinforcing where we are. And that's fine, but it doesn't take you anywhere and it doesn't impact you. It just says, you're good, don't worry about it, you're good. As opposed to something that moves you from A to B, that takes you someplace, opens your eyes afresh so that you can look at that thing, like we were taken through the story of Daniel this morning. We read that story, we know that story. See it with fresh eyes, and there's space now for God to start speaking to you.
Good answers, guys. Yeah, what they said. I'll take it to the nature of a song. And we were working on a music video with Keith and Kristen Getty. You guys know the Gettys, wonderful. And so we were in Northern Ireland, and I'm walking down the beach with Keith, and I thought, this is my big chance. Keith and I asked him the same question. So what makes a great song? He said, if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. A great story is great. That's my answer.
Okay. Let me start with a really easy question here then from the audience. What are some disciplines and life practices you would recommend to developing better storytelling? Disciplines and life practices you recommend to develop better storytelling?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is lay the groundwork in prayer. And you want to till the soil, if I could say that. And as a Christian, you want the Lord to help you the whole time. You want his hand on it. Some people would say, I want it to be anointed. Awesome. But you want to chase the presence of the Lord. So The ground needs to be fertilized and tilled in that manner so that there's prayer that goes into it. There's no reason you should be jumping ahead of the Lord trying to do something, expecting him to bless it later. So you say, Lord, can I chase you first? Can I spend time with you first? So there's overflow into every other aspect. And so I would say lay the groundwork in prayer and make sure your soil spiritually and mentally is in a really good place, because the more we chase the Lord and bathe a project in prayer going into it, the more we see the Lord showing up in ways that only he can show up.
Anyone else, gentlemen?
Sure.
Using that word really loosely.
Yeah. Read a lot, expose yourself to a lot. One of the questions, a friend of mine started a training ground for Christians in Hollywood who want to write for Hollywood. And she would be asked all the time, hey, my son's in high school, what film school should he go to get the training he needs? And she said, don't. Go to a liberal arts institution. Go to some place that makes you do math, that makes you do literature, that makes you study Old New Testament. Go to a place that exposes you beyond film. So you're not just repeating. We need to expose ourselves. Read screenplays, watch movies, but you need to expose yourself to a world beyond that. Otherwise, you're just repeating stories that somebody else told. Find people that you don't know and spend time with them. Find a culture you don't know. Spend time with that. Be curious. Curiosity is your number one motivator. We're called to love our neighbor, which includes involvement with our neighbor, I think. Right? Part of that is when you're sitting with strangers, are you talking more about yourself, or are you asking them, oh, what do you do? That's where you're going to get your stories. We have enough stories about filmmakers making films, right? We have enough stories that are repeats. Find the stories out there that haven't been told, and do that by exposing yourself to people.
Man, going third, they take all the good ones first. I get the
You'll
first
get the first
one
question next time.
Muscle memory is my answer. Anything you want to get good at, you got to repeat and repeat and repeat. You want to learn how to hit a tennis ball, don't read about it, go hit tennis balls. And you want to become a good writer, just work at it and work at it and work at it. I agree with a prayerful heart, and I agree with a broad, read a lot, but some of you have really, really God-given talent in this room. There's probably a handful of you in here who are really, really talented. That'll never come out unless you develop the muscle memory to learn to write. Some of you might not be as naturally talented, but you'll work so hard, you'll craft some incredible stories. I don't think there's any shortcuts.
Yeah, can I just affirm that? No shortcuts, and it is work. Right? If you think, oh, I want to write screenplays because that's the easy part, then.
So, John, since you insist on answering this next question,
closest to you after all.
I'm going to give you a really good question here. How do you separate story? Oh, somebody just superseded me here. Hang on. How do you separate story from reality when making faith films, i.e. making miracles happen on film versus reality? So that's an easy question.
Jeez, thanks a lot. Alex, what do you think about that one? Know your genre. Like, it's important to know what kind of film you're making. You got to know your genre. So if you're going to make a film where miracles happen in a temporal world, then you're making a magical film. And you got to decide that's your world, and then you got to decide how far to push that. If you're making a film that's in reality, but God does do miracles, well, then you got to be honest about it. That's the thing. I did a film, you might not believe this. So the film is called The Frontier Boys. We brought it here a few years ago. In the film, TJ is shot, and he's in a hospital, and the machine quits, and that's it for TJ and his not very educated, not very religious friends know nothing but start to pray, and they start to pray, and beep, beep, the machine comes back to life. Sounds like a cheesy Christian film, right? Okay, I'll admit that. Kind of does. But get this. The actor playing the role, Taylor DeRue, that happened to him in real life. It happened to him. He was a basketball player. He collapsed on the basketball court. He was dead. His coach came in and prayed over him, and he came back to life. So don't tell me it was a cheesy Christian film. Just talk to the actor, because it really happened. So when we're doing God miracle stories, we're actually just doing true stories.
Yeah, I think within that, I mean, you have to be You have to be honest in your storytelling. You can make the miraculous work if you include all of the story. So what I mean by that is when you have something that a deus ex machina. So that's a Greek term from theater. It says God out of the box. Because a lot of times they would get their characters into Greek plays in situations where they can't be solved, and then they would literally, God from the machine, they would lower, one of the Greek gods would be lowered down and would say, I'm waving my magic wand, I'm fixing everything. We have a tradition in Christianity of God coming from the machine and saving us from ourselves. But why is the one story about clearly these myths and the other story about something true? Is because we also have God in our crisis. We have God in our darkness. And if we're setting up our story in the right way, the audience actually welcomes God intervening because they know it's a real story. It's a true thing that we're going through. And I don't mean it has to be factual. The most famous Deus Ex Machina film out there is called Raiders of the Lost Ark. When you ask, how did Indiana Jones defeat the Nazis? He didn't. God literally came out of a box. And we're okay with that, though, because of the journey that Indy went on. Indiana Jones is a story about faith. It is about a man who starts out without faith, a man who does not believe there is a God, and his big act of faith at the end is close your eyes. I mean, think about that. I'm an archaeologist. My life is devoted to being able to see history. I am not going to see this because I believe it's real. It takes a journey, but when we get to the end of that journey, we believe it. The same is true when we're doing our films that are explicitly about God. Have we gone on the journey, or have we decided that, runtime's at 2 hours, so God's going to step in and fix it because the movie has to be over, right? Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
What comes to mind for me, and I agree with what John said, each of our films, we determine we will never create a miracle we have not seen God do. Amen. And so for us, even in Facing the Giants, and when the people that scoffed at Facing the Giants says, they just wrote everything that God does. Well, those were based on actual happenings and facts right here. The revival at the school, the couple that couldn't have children, then we did the 40 Days Impossible, and actually, it was 3 couples, but they all were pregnant at the end of the 40 days, and the doctors had told them, you can't have kids. And then the coach was given a vehicle and things like that. So the man that prays over the lockers walking down the hallway, those were all based on actual things that happened. The reason we don't say this movie is a true story is we took those events over a number of years and put it into 1 year and reordered it for the sake of the story of the movie. But you saying that you've won a state championship? We've actually won 3 now. And there's a revival at the school and all this? Yes. But so when we made movies like Facing the Giants or the couples that come back together, as we did in Fireproof, we'll write it in the context and structure of a movie, but they're based on things that actually happened. So where I agree with John is we don't make up miracles for Jesus to do in our films that we have not actually seen him do. And so I appreciate John saying that the actor literally went through being in the hospital and his heart stopped or whatever stopped, and he came back. We like basing all the actions we see the Lord do in our movies on things that have actually happened.
So this question, we'll start with Sean. No
Alex,
real
what do you
reason
think the
except
answer
that he needs to start. This question, I'm going to frame it in that it's not directly about story, but it definitely informs how you tell a story and also the nature by which you tell the story, and finally, how effectively you can tell the story. Okay, so that's the framework for this story, for this question. So, how do you love your family well, yet pursue your big ideas film? What type of practical boundaries do you put in place to keep God first and love your family well?
Yeah, so my kids can never think Dad loves making movies more than he loves me. They cannot think that. My family, my wife. So what we do, we walk through and pray together on the projects. I talk to them about the projects. Stephen does the same thing. So when we're going into a movie, they're on the journey with us, at least emotionally and prayerfully. And then we also block out enough time to shoot productively, but give breaks. So what our favorite thing to do that we've done in each of our films, if it takes 6 weeks of shooting, we shoot 3 5-day weeks, have the weekends off for church and family, and then in the middle you have a full week off to go pour into your wife and kids, then come back and we'll do the last 3 weeks. So we do not try to do a marathon where just tell them goodbye for 4 months, 5 months, and we're gonna be making a movie. So we try to balance that. I'm not saying there's an obvious perfect way to do that, but when our families know we love you, we're coming back to see you as often, as regularly as we can, or have you on set with us or in the town. Talking to Adam Drake, who we're just with over the weekend doing The Chosen, he and his wife, and worked it out with Dallas Jenkins. When we're shooting these long days for The Chosen, he has breaks to go reconnect with family and children, even if they're still shooting, comes back, shoots for a while. So your kids can never think what you do in making movies or chasing media. When I say movies, I'm talking about all of television, movies, short, long, everything. May they never think you love that more than you love them, because your children will listen to you if they know you love them. If they think somebody else loves them more, they'll listen to them more, and they'll shut you down. So may your responsibility as a spouse, a parent, brother, sister, never be superseded by, I just got to make movies.
I don't want to be critical, but I think we're asking the wrong question. So let me rephrase the question if I can. How do you possibly make the project you want to make given how much your time you're spending with your family? It's not, oh, how can I make my family understand because I'm doing this thing? It's how do I fit this thing in around the family? For Catherine and I'm a bit controversial here because people say, who's the head of your household? She'll get asked all the time. It's like, well, when Sean dragged you to the East Coast, how did that make you feel? And I'm sorry, but I feel sad for your marriage if your thought is that we're not working as one. God made us one, which means we have to work as one, which means, just as you're saying, we have to be on board. The family has to be on board, or we're just not going there. I can break that down for you later if you want, how that works we don't have kids, so we have a lot more freedom than a lot of people perhaps have with that. But I have to guide the marriage. There's a famous Hollywood couple that is famous for never being in the tabloids. And part of that is they put family first. So it's a husband and wife team. Both of them are really prominent actors. You will never see 2 movies come out, one starring him and one starring her at the same time. Because the moment they had kids, they made a pact with each other that if one of them is making a movie, the other one is full-time with the kids. And she's not working or he's not working, so they can go be on set. They can live in the country wherever the other one is done. So they've sacrificed 50% of their career. These are A-list people. They're as busy as you're ever going to get, and they figured it out, right? Right? We can figure it out because God gave us family first, and then a chance to make movies comes well down the list.
Jesus sent his disciples out in pairs, right? He didn't send them out solos, sent them out in pairs. And I look at these guys, brothers, Shannon, Steve, you guys, you're there, I kind of trust you because he's around and vice versa. I think it's true. It's true, man. Iron sharpens iron. I think the Irwins are brothers, and I kind of trust the two of them together. Judy and John, man, we're married, and she's the producer and I'm the director, and we travel together, and we know that we're putting marriage on display as much as trying to put a movie on display. And when we had kids who were little at home, we didn't do that. At that time, I would do something. We weren't doing that. But I think whether it's your brother or your spouse, but even if you're out, even if you're on this trip to this festival, if you're all by yourself, get a pen pal or something. Don't go on a trip, any trip, alone. Be with somebody as a pair. If it was good enough for the disciples, it should be good enough for us.
Great answers, guys. Thank you. The nature of this question reveals a little bit of innocence in the way that it's asked, okay? So that's the preamble. You guys ready for this? How do you come up with an idea or story no one has told? Or how do you write it in a way no one else has? You know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's interesting that Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. So, so, but the audience can be new for you that you're presenting this story to. And so that's important. And we have, every 40 years or so, there's another generation. And it's funny to even talk to my kids that I've never heard of Gone with the Wind. Some of these movies that we're like, what? Wizard of Oz, what is that? And so it's interesting. So we have, there's always a new culture, a new audience coming that can be presented with a story told with today's technology or today's flavors that will impact them. So it's hard to say a story that's never been told before, but you can certainly craft it and flavor it in a way that's palatable for them and is good for them.
I think rather than chasing after new, think about fresh. So I worked in Hollywood for quite a while, and Hollywood is hilarious because Hollywood wants something new. They want this movie to never have been seen before. Hollywood will never, ever, ever buy anything new because it hasn't been tested. So they want the brand new idea that has been tested, which means they don't know what they want. What we really want is fresh. Take that story and figure out, who's your audience? That's one of the ways to do it, is look at your audience. I'm telling the story of David and Bathsheba. I'm going to tell it to children. What? Okay. What if instead of King David, it's King George, and what if instead of Bathsheba, it's a rubber ducky? Right? That story's been told, yeah. And by the way, thank you, Phil Vischer, for completely rewriting me on that, for those of you who know that I'm trying to promote myself here. But that was just looking at your audience. Who's the audience? How have they heard this story? Is there a way that they could hear it that's fresh to them? Is there a way that I could tell this story with a high school football team rather than telling it with an army, right? So fresh. Is there fresh eyes?
Man. That would be such an intimidating assignment to me. I don't think I could ever get started. And so we're all individually, uniquely, wonderfully made, and we couldn't write the same story if we tried, unless we purely plagiarized each other. And, so I like what Stephen was talking about. Go to the stream, sit in the stream, and see where it carries you. And you know what? Let's just be honest. We're all going to borrow ideas. There's only 7 stories. They've taught me in screenwriting school. There's only 7 stories. So you're going to put your own spin, your own emphasis, your own flavor. And I just think, don't put such a high bar. Oh, that reminds me a little bit of, yes, it will. There's only 7 stories. So I just encourage you to be free of that. All these are good techniques. I mean, any good writer tries another twist. Or what if the character had, an eye patch, right? It's character development. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to write the story God gave you, I think.
Amen.
So I want to compliment the audience for asking such great questions. All these softball questions we're past that now. Now let's get into some really hard questions, right? No, we want to compliment you, give yourselves a hand of applause, I guess. So, they're so modest. So here's one that struck me here. How do you make sure you aren't telling his story wrong? Is it possible to accidentally is the operative word, twist the right message in a wrong way?
I'll take a swing at that one. Is Daniel Schwarber in the room right now? Are you here, Daniel? What an incredibly great plenary session he gave today on story. Wow. Yeah. What he did for me is he confirmed little voices and instincts that I've been thinking anyway, and he really put some substance to it. And that is that you don't have to tell the moral to every story. And the Bible doesn't always do that. And so for me right now, there's a big booth out there that we're launching a new series called The Sheeps. And the Sheeps tell Bible stories, and they actually get them wrong half the time, or most of the time, or actually all the time. And I've been pushing back on everybody who's said, well, are you going to wrap it up? Are you going to give the moral to the story? And I've kind of had some fuzzy reasons why not. Daniel gave me great reasons today. The story is the reason. The story is the story. I might have the meaning wrong to your question. I might put a moral on it that serves my purposes. So I'm happy to just get people to open the Bible and encounter it and resist the temptation to wrap it all up with a little bow, which means be nice to your friends or share your vegetables or whatever it is. So we're trying, and again, thank you for that great session today. that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, you can mess it up. We see it over and over and over again. Is it possible for you to mess up the relationship with your brother or your sister or your mother or your wife? Of course. We do it all the time. So it's kind of a similar thing. Don't be driven by fear, though, of messing it up. Several things that you can do. The very first thing that you can do, and this is the Sunday school answer, and it's the Sunday school answer because it's the right one, is prayer. Constantly, you should be praying through your story. I like to try to get to a point where my prayer and my working on story are inseparable, right? So constantly being in prayer, constantly checking your own motives, constantly come back to the Bible. So my friend Chris Young, he teaches at UCLA screenwriting. He says, find the verse that encapsulates where you think you're going, print it out and put it on your screen. So it's always in view. A movie I wrote, Not Your Romeo and Juliet, was trying to look at love from a way other than just the typical rom-com. I had pulled out each phrase of what love is from 1 Corinthians 13, had it on my whiteboard, so as I was outlining on the major side of the whiteboard, it was always in front of me. Did it come out perfect? No. Did I screw it up? Yes. Did I screw up the message? Probably. Are there people who are going to get it wrong? Absolutely, because the interpreter is on their own. The interpreter gets to interpret on their own. They also have to be in prayer, right? But if you do those things, and then the last one that I'm going to mention, there's a bazillion of them, but it goes back to don't go alone. It goes back to working with your family. Be surrounded by people who are watching what you're doing, who are reading what you're writing, who are asking along the way, who can help guide you. Find those people who love you. They're not trying to tear you down. And they love you enough to be honest with you. They're not just going to be pumping you up. And when you find those people, they'll come and they'll say, Sean, I understand what you're doing here. That's going to be very effective, and it's going to do exactly the opposite of what it should be doing. And I go and rewrite.
That was great. I was resonating with everything you were saying. So same thing, bathe it in prayer. You know, it's obvious when you make a film, when we watch it, you can tell by watching the movie how much the filmmaker cared about this story. It just comes out, right? And when someone has spent time with the Lord and you're watching a movie that's powerful, and I'm going to be honest, I felt this way watching Jesus Revolution. I'm watching the movie, and man, my heart is stirred, and I'm like, Lord, may I see revival. I want to see that. Who do I need to be more open with, more assertive with, and loving them and sharing the gospel with them? And what am I praying toward, even in my community or this kind of culture? And so that came off the screen at me. And that this matters, this is important. And so when you do something, however you want to call it, the aroma or the vibe, and I think that's what's the vibe of this movie, whatever. But it's going to be obvious. What were you soaking in before you made this movie? And that's going to come out in the movie. So I totally agree. Man, bathe it in prayer. Saturate it in, Lord, I want your hands all over this, but help me tell an effective, well-told story. And that's the secret sauce for me.
So I'm going to ask you to take off your screenwriter's hat, storyteller hat for a moment. Well, you can never take the storyteller hat off. But as producers and directors, what draws your interest toward a particular story?
I like one that makes me think, process. Again, all of us like our coffee different ways. Some people like it to be more sweet. Some people like, man, straight black, right? And but we prefer different ways. But we want the caffeine in it. We want what it does at the very end. And so movies are kind of like that. And so when I see a movie, if I'm with, we have to go back to target audience. Every movie is not for everybody. It's just not. You have to pick a target audience, and like for The Forge, we hit the target we were aiming for. And if anybody criticizes us, well, we didn't do this over here, that's not what we were aiming at. We hit the target we were aiming for. We're aiming for stirring more people walking with Christ, to start more discipleship groups, to pour into discipleship more, and to do that, start thinking about investing in sharing the gospel with more and more people. We don't need lukewarm Christians. We need more people that are wholeheartedly following Jesus Christ as best we can. So that was the target we were aiming for. So you're going to have to pick a target. And you say, Lord, what is my target? And aim at that target. And you will always be criticized by somebody. That's just the nature of it. The higher you are on the pole, the more people will shoot at you. But Jesus was shot at, right? The Pharisees and everybody else said, this guy's terrible. We got to take him out. We got to kill him. So, and then one of his 12 disciples denies and walks away from him, right? And he was perfect. So you can't do it perfectly, but man, you can seek the Lord in the process. You can pick your target and aim and say, Lord, would you help me do the best I can at telling an effective, powerful story that hits that target?
So as a producer and director, I don't direct as much anymore. The story what draws me are the stories that come alive. So there isn't a specific genre or a specific type of story or specific, even a specific audience. I've told so many stories for so many different audiences, and you're absolutely right. You've got to know who you're telling it to. But if the story comes alive to me, that makes me want to work to find the audience, or makes me want to work to find the. So yeah, if I'm reading a script or if in a pitch, I'm like, oh, I can see it happening. It's a story. It's not a script. It's a story. It's not a pitch.
Yeah, those are good answers. I think I like a twist. I like a peripety, as they say in theater. I always like something happen that I didn't see coming, and I think that's a sign of good writing. I also like heroes. I mean, really, you could just show me the Bourne Identity over and over again. I'd be pretty happy. It's a good hero story, and so I like heroes. And it's people that do something selflessly, acts of courage or heroism, that they rise above it.
So this question has gotten 22 thumbs up, so people really want an answer to this. But it's also somewhat mechanical, technical, so just prepping you for that. It's a three-part question. How do you, I feel like a journalist at the White House, when they ask, I got three questions. How do you start a story? How do you finish a story? And do you have any tips to share for working through the messy middle?
Mine will be the shortest, and I'm not saying this is the right way, but what works for us, we start with the end and work backwards. So we know we're going to land right here, and this is how we want them to walk out of the theater. So we start right there, and then we work backwards. And I'm not saying it's 100% backwards, because you have pieces and everything, but yes, there's a 3-act, save the cat, et cetera, which is good. But yeah, we start with the end. If you don't have a good ending, you don't have a good story.
Arthur Miller agrees with you. Death of a Salesman started with him imagining a woman standing next to a grave saying, attention must be paid. And then he asked himself, how did she get there? Start with the end, and you know where you're going, right? So that's very good. Also, David Ball has a book called Backwards and Forwards, which is actually a book written for directors, but I use it as a playwriting book. And he says you can't understand a play reading it forwards, but backwards you can understand it. So constantly going backwards and forwards. I teach structure. For anybody who was at my session yesterday, it sounds like I'm saying start with the hook and then do the balance. I discourage storytelling starting from the beginning and going forward. When you're creating your story, when you're thinking of your story, when you're brainstorming on your story, don't start with the beginning and then say, and then what happens, and then what happens. Instead, start with what you know. And it might be the ending. For Arthur Miller, it was the ending. For Alex, it's the ending. For some of you, it might be the climax. You know what that battle is. For some of you, because you're talking about a story about the dark night of the soul that you're going through, you know the crisis. So you know what that scene is going to be. Whatever scene God has given to you, you know that scene. So if you know the crisis, well, maybe you move backwards and forwards from that and figure out where your story is. So there is no right way to do it necessarily. But I agree, I want to say, just to reaffirm, if you are a writer and you have 20 unfinished scripts, it's because you didn't know where the script was going. So the way to get over that is know where it's going and then backtrack.
Man, you guys are good. I'll give 3 quick answers because you gave a 3-part question. Okay. So the way I start a story is I get excited about something. And I'm an excitable person. It doesn't take much to get me excited. But if I'm excited about something, that's the start. And then the work begins. And then I've got this Pavlovian process where I put on classical music and I sit. And then I start writing. So that's kind of when I just have no worry. I can write anything. I'm just using Word. I'm not going anywhere. And then when it's really time to start, then I'm a huge fan of structure, and I really am a Blake Snyder fan. And I will put on my board the whole outline, and then as I think of any ideas, anecdotes, songs, jokes, scenes, setups, I just pop them kind of where they go. And I don't really start fleshing out the dialogue and the writing of a script until I've got my whole structure. And I spend more time, it takes me longer to put the structure together than to write 100 pages. That actually is kind of the easy part. So those are the three things. I gotta be excited about it, and then I gotta have, the reason it's classical music is I don't know much about it, and so it doesn't distract me when it's playing. Other music I start paying attention to, and then I forget where I am. And then I structure it on the board.
So I pressed the wrong button on this panel here. There was a question that had like 20 or maybe up to 30 thumbs up, and I pressed the check and it disappeared. So in the interim, I'm going to ask a question, and maybe you guys can find that again, because it was a really good question. So this is a writing process question. What's your personal process for taking a story from idea to final draft? I know you already covered, you start from the end and work it, but what are some of the other ways? And the reason I'm asking this question is I work with a lot of young people writing, and they haven't quite developed their process yet. So maybe you can share some of yours.
I'm going to say this. This is going to sound weird. This is not the right answer. But I write when I'm inspired. And that's the best stuff. When you're inspired, just like he says, he gets excited about something and you pour into it because you are so motivated, and you can imagine the audience getting it too. But there are times you have to write because you have to complete it or have to work through it, and it's just hard. And so there are plenty of days where it's hard, and you hit the writer's block and all that, and I get away from it, go spend time in prayer. Lord, would you help me? Would you inspire me? But those times I'll wake up in the middle of the night, or something happens and I just get inspired. Man, those are the best times to sit, because that's when it flows. And so if I'm inspired, write then. I mean, if you're in the bathroom, maybe not at the moment, but write as soon as you're inspired. If you're not inspired, pray unless you got a deadline, and you just got to work through it. So that's the hard part. But yeah, if ever you are inspired, pour out then.
And that is the right answer, because everybody's made differently, as we think we've already said, which includes how we work best is different. So you do have to kind of find what works for you. Experiment with it. Don't feel like, oh, because writer X has written a lot, then I have to do their system. I like to write at night. I like to write after my wife has gone to bed. That's when the ideas start flowing for me. So finding that. I think for me, the first thing that I do with every story now, though, is I want to make sure that I have a full story before I start writing, because early part of my career, I have boxes full of uncompleted scripts. And a lot of them, I realized, well, I never had the full story. So I do like to do a very, very simple 5-part outline just to see, does it have all the pieces? And I do a lot of whiteboard, the similar kind of a thing you do. I'll put it up there like, okay, where are all the pieces that I need, and start bouncing around and start filling it out to see. I'm at a stage, dream your outlines. When we talk about outlines, when I was young and people said outlines, what I heard them saying is, don't be creative. Just use the comptroller part of your brain and establish outline. It took me a long time to realize that the same creativity you get when you're writing a scene and it's just flowing because you can see it, you can apply that same thing to outlining, of seeing the broad strokes of your story in an imaginative, inspirational way, as opposed to being technical. So that's the first thing I do, is I sit back and I say, can I see a whole story, or do I just have a piece of it now? When you get to be my age, you start to realize that just because you had an idea for a scene when you were 18 didn't mean you're supposed to write the whole story then. Sometimes you have to live life to know what the rest of that story is supposed to be.
I hope this is helpful for you writers out there. I hope just hearing us sort of struggle our way through this, you're not alone in this. But for me, I actually know I have to get a job done. I'm actually going to talk about this tomorrow in the plenary. And I kind of liken it to going on a river. Like when I was a kid in Arizona, we would go up to Oak Creek Canyon and we'd go tubing. Or in Michigan, we might get a canoe and go down the Pierre Marquette. Well, I know I'm going to go on that river next Saturday. It's not that I'm going to be inspired next Saturday. So I plan to go on the river next Saturday. And I don't just find myself, oh, here, look at this, I'm in a river. No, I'm going to drive up there and rent a canoe and get in and tip over the whole thing. That's what writing is like for me. I just plan it. So I just finished a screenplay, and to get myself sort of in the river, I went all the way to Germany and went to Erfurt, where Johann Pachelbel lived and worked, and visited, where he was and where he lived. And I said to Judy, I'm done with this screenplay by Friday, because that's how long I had. And I was done by Friday. So for me, it can be just task-oriented. But I believe, and again, I think this is the same thing Stephen was talking about, I really trust that when I get in that river and it's prayer-based and it's just emotional-based, I'm going to do the work then. And I schedule it, and then that's when I do it.
I want to just throw in an anecdote from Dean Batali, who did the Destination Heaven TV series. He was on a panel once when a group of filmmakers, he writes for TV, a group of filmmakers were asked, how long does it take to write a screenplay? And they were debating, oh, usually it's about a year. It's like, oh, no, it's about 6 months. Oh, it's about, and they're going on. And finally he said, here's how long it takes to write a screenplay. What's the deadline?
Yeah.
The deadline is next week. It takes a week to write a screenplay. Right. If the deadline is tomorrow morning, it takes a night to write a screenplay. And he said, you guys go ahead and keep debating.
So this is a short question, but it's a very dangerous one, and one that is somewhat fraught with opportunity, but at the same time, guard your time. Here we go. We wrote a story, how, where, and I'm adding this, to whom do we pitch? Because in a setting like this, where a lot of people have great stories, ideas, not sure if they're great yet, but they want to start pitching it. And you are here, and they probably want to pitch you. What happens? That's why it's dangerous. By the way, there's 140 people that gave a thumbs up. Actually, it's 14. I added a 0.
Look, I'm asking the same question, and I have no answer for you. That's good. I don't know. I've struck out on every pitch I've ever tried. I've been to the networks. I've been at the film festivals. I've pitched and pitched and I like pitching. I enjoy it. I make nice posters, and we put a story together, and I make a video, and I pitch. So if you have the answer to that question, please come down and talk to me after the session, because I try everything. I mean, I'm still pitching. I'm going to pitch Alex as soon as we get off the stage here. He doesn't know that, but oof, get ready.
I'm going to pitch Alex right now. Yeah. So there's a story about it.
I say try them all and just figure it won't work, but you're going to get better at the process, and then someday it'll work, and I'll be the first to tell you when it does.
I don't know that there is a great answer for that. I will tell you that working on our very first movie before we shot it, which is 2002, when I was working on it, I ended up writing to Mel Gibson and sending it to him. There was no response. I took it to heart, got my feelings hurt, before realizing later on, for people that have worked with him, that there are thousands and thousands and thousands. He can't even read them. He doesn't see them because that would take all of his time. Later, my brother and I learned after Flywheel and Giants, we were getting dozens. We were trying to read them and respond. We're like, wow, this is taking a long time. Then after Fireproof, it got into the hundreds. After Courageous, War Room, it's in the thousands. We cannot read them. There's just impossible. So we're thinking, okay, what do we do, Lord? So we have to pray through it. So far for us, the Lord has prompted us with what to do next. I'm not saying that's true for everybody. But so that is hard. That's where you got to pray it through and ask the Lord, is this for me to have the story that someone else makes or for you to make? Because we ended up just starting to make our own, right? And so I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but I'm saying that I don't know that there is a great answer for that. You just got to pray it through and say, Lord, if you're in this, would you open the door that you want me to walk through?
Yeah, I agree. There is no right answer. We're all the same way. My wife is an actress. People come up all the time and say, where do I go to get jobs? And she's like, I don't know, but when you find out, I'm following you. I'll be right behind you. I think for just about everything every major job that I've had and every major script that I've had produced, I did not find somebody and convince them to make it. They found me. Even my breakthrough King George, I didn't pitch that to Phil Vischer. I had a friend who is an animator, Brian Ballinger, was being wooed by them, and he said, hey, would you read my friend's script? I never even intended it to go. So my big break had nothing to do with me. Serve and create relationships. When I look back on my career, that's where it came from, was the relationships. So it's not so much about, oh, I found an important person and handed off, but as much as, I got some jobs because my friend Corey Edwards gets asked to do jobs, and he didn't have time, and he said, you should look at Sean Gaffney. Corey and I were in a small group Bible study together. That's how we made our Hollywood connection, right? Dean Vitale will talk about the way that a TV used to work, if you want to be a TV writer, is you go and you be a PA and you serve the writers. And then there's going to be a breakthrough moment where they go, oh my goodness, you're paying attention, you're working hard. Are you a writer? Can I read your script? That's how he got his script read. He has a famous story of he was working on a show and they loved to snack, and one of them loved Lucky Charms. And he noticed that the Lucky Charms were always running out, so he always kept an extra box under the cupboard. Came in one day, the writer's like, we're out of Lucky Charms. And he said, no, we're not. I keep an extra box under the cupboard. And that day, the guy said, can I read your script? It was through service and relationship. It's through getting to know people. It's being on people's sets. It's saying, how can I help you develop your script, not worrying about my script. And then they start to go, oh, hey, you're a writer? We need a writer.
Can I piggyback on that for a second? So last year, I was here with the Morrison brothers, and just a few weeks before we came out here, because of their service to their community, where they made this concept trailer for a dance event, which I had a chance to see, called the Victory Swing, I was just stunned at the quality. I think, Alex, do you remember that? You saw that? And so I immediately wanted to sign them up for a 3-picture deal, which they did, and we've been in development, we've completed the script, but that's how you do it. They served their community. They had no notion of pitching it. They just wanted to give. And they had also been learning their craft since they were like little boys when I first knew about them and met them. So that's really the best way, is service, and then show that you're not just talking about what you want to do, but you're actually doing it and showing them, you're demonstrating passion, but also talent. John, your turn.
Next, let's move. I have nothing to add. Yeah. What do you got next?
Well, how are we doing on time? Are we still good? I've got one more question I can ask. So this is the last question, I think. Yeah, 152. So I had an opportunity to ask this question for Alex. It's going to be the same question for you guys, but he's had a long time now to think about it, which is, what is the one thing about storytelling, filmmaking, career that you just, haven't had a chance to tell people, but you really want them to know? We haven't covered it, but it's been in your heart. Maybe it's never been asked, or maybe, something you like to make sure that people know about.
All of my kids play a sport. My daughter is playing college basketball in the final national tournament for the NAIA, and I'm excited about that. But, she loves playing season after season. When I ask her, when you go into the season, you're going to be fouled during games. And she was like, well, yeah. And sometimes you're going to get bruises and knocked down and whatever. Well, yeah. And so I said, okay, life is like that. Marriage is like that. It takes work. So you say, Lord, walk with me as we embrace the hurdles and the bumps and bruises. If I'm going the direction you want me to go, walk with me. It's hard. But if you're doing what the Lord's called you to do and gifted you to do and developing that, it's worth it. It's worth it. So teams win championship. All of them are fouled and knocked down and have frustrations and missed shots, right? But that's part of the journey. But at the very end, you want to be standing before the Lord and hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant. That's what you want to hear the Lord say. That's what I want to hear the Lord say. So honor him all along the way. It's going to be hard, and say, hey, but Lord, if you walk with me, let's do the journey.
I was given a 2-minute warning. Excuse me. So you each have a minute.
All right, I'll be very quick. You are uniquely and wonderfully made. God made you individually to be you. You don't need to be, we already have the 4 of us up here. We don't need to be replaced. We don't need another one. He's given you a voice. He's given you something to say. He's given you someone to talk to. He's given you an audience. He has given you the kind of stories We need, as a kingdom, we're a body. We need the arms, we need the legs, we need the toes, we need the arms. Don't say to yourself, oh my goodness, I'm a toe, therefore I'm not part of the body. I need to turn myself into a hand, right? We're not complete. We're not going to tell the full story of God with any one of us. We're only going to tell the full story of God when all of us are telling the pieces of the story that God is telling us that we're supposed to tell.
Cool, I get to bring up the caboose. I would say this. He made you for this right here. This is filmmaking right now. It's today. It's the table you're sitting around. It's the manna God gave us for today. And you don't wait to celebrate when you get the job or when you have your first day or when your film comes out or when you win the award or, like Stephen said, you put it in the drawer when you're done. You got to celebrate every single day of life God gives you, including today at this conference, in this lunchtime, listening to these guys talk, because God wants you to be in relationship with him daily. So you get manna for one day. And if you try to get 2 days, he gets mad and he kills you. So, is that right? You talked about getting the story right earlier. So enjoy today's process, what we're doing today. This is filmmaking right here.
Amen.
I want to close this in a quick prayer, and then you can applaud some more. Great panelists. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for stories, your story, and the fact that we're here, Father, that we can learn from those who you've already pouring your story into and through, that we can experience it. Lord, you spoke to us today, each one of us individually, and you know the questions that we have and you know the yearnings that we have, but more than anything, Father, allow us to, not what we want, Lord, but what you want us to look up to you and to follow you and spread the gospel, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. It's hard to do what you just did because you have answers for all those things too. So.
Let's give them another hand. All right. All right. We're so excited. All right, just a few questions as we prepare to transition. You guys cold? Kind of cold in here? Yes. So go ahead and stand up where you are, just really quickly. Go ahead and stand up where you are. Kind of get that blood flowing again. I just have a few announcements as we prepare to leave. No food in the atrium, so you can't take your chips with you. You can't take your chocolate chip cookies with you. Can't take any of those things with you. You have to eat them before you leave here, and so please make sure you eat them before you leave. And then also, I just want to remind you, on Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m., we will have the kickoff service, so we want to make sure everyone is there for the kickoff, and that'll be inside of the worship center that's here at Sherwood. Also, I want to remind you, if you haven't had a chance to visit the prayer room, please visit the prayer room. And then also out in the atrium, we have a prayer request box with a prayer request form and praises. And so we would love for you to fill those out and put those inside the boxes on your way out or today, sometime today. And then also I want to direct your attention to your workbook, and it talks about the workshops that are currently going on this afternoon, okay? And so this is what I want to do. So I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, and I am used to moving people at a fast rate, okay? And so I don't want you to sit back down. I want everybody to just turn to your left and walk straight out those doors right to the worship center. Can y'all do that? Love you guys so much. Thank you for being obedient. We'll see you in your next sessions. Just keep moving. All right, everybody, let's continue to move. All right. There you go. Keep my microphone on. There you go. Perfect. Just leave your trash on the table.